Guess who got brands talking? Brandlife.co.za.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the WITEE Chatterbot show. If you're new to the show, a warm welcome to you. I am Carmen Murray, your host, and we are coming live from Brand Life Studios, 27 boxes in the bohemian city of Melville. Now, the WITEE Chatterbot show, Women in Tech Empowering Everyone, aims to empower you by interviewing a wide range of remarkable and thought-provoking guests to discover as we navigate through the constant change around us. We will explore topics on business, technology, innovation, and marketing, and give you bite-sized insights that can help propel forward your business and to embrace the entrepreneurial culture. Now, today we have Elizabeth de Stadler in the house. She is actually remotely tuning in via Skype, and she is a disruptive force of nature in privacy law and gives a fresh perspective to compliance issues. What I love about Elizabeth is that she takes complex law and puts it in plain language. And I think there's no better gift than that. And she's also the founding director of Novation Consulting, which is a quirky company that specializes in all things consumer law. And she also does designing and delivering of training. But more importantly, she also is the chairperson of the Regulatory Affair Council for the IABSA. So, Elizabeth, warm welcome to you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, well, at least I hope you can feel it's a warm welcome because it's very, very chilly because you guys have sent us the weather with your snow.
Fantastic.
Okay, so let's take the bull by the horn. So the whole world is talking about GDPR, and we see the digital universe flame up with debates around GDPR. But the reality is it's hitting home because of the Protection of Personal Information Act. Now, I would like for us to maybe put everything in perspective and give an update of where we stand. So, POPIA is not a force yet. So, where do we stand?
So the information regulator has been appointed. Actually, she's been in that office for about a year now. It's Advocate Pansy Klakula, and she's also got 5 other panelists that have been appointed on a part-time basis. And they've been fairly vocal, actually. You would have seen that they demanded some answers from Facebook because there were some South Africans in the Cambridge Analytica breach. Yeah, they summoned the CEO of Liberty to come and answer questions about that breach. So they've been fairly active, and the reason why they can do that is because of Section 14 of the Constitution that gives all South Africans a right to privacy. So the fact that POPIA isn't in effect yet doesn't stop them from doing stuff.
Wow.
We're about, best guess, 20 months, I think, away from the act being in full force. At the moment, the holdup is that they're having a bit of a difference of opinion with Treasury, some very technical stuff that even I can't translate into plain language. but essentially, Treasury won't show them the money. So they're aiming to be fully operational with the sort of the support staff that they need towards the beginning of next year, and then all companies in South Africa will have a year to get their houses in order.
Is that not afterwards? So after the 20 months, then they still have a year to.
No, I've built the year into my estimate.
Into your estimate. Okay.
As of today, 20 months, then they can start fining people.
Tick tock.
They maybe, just to quickly bring the GDPR in, that piece of legislation, which is a European piece of legislation, is of course has been enforced since the 25th of May. Everybody would have seen an exponential increase in lawyers emailing you with new privacy notices and stuff like that. And I think one of the things that irritates me the most at the moment is the just staggering amount of bad advice out there about, when a South African company has to worry about the GDPR.
That's interesting because it seems like when you say that, it seems like a pattern because remember before the regulator was even appointed for the Protection of Personal Information Act, there was consultants and lawyers going out and starting training courses and putting the fear of God into organizations. So do you and I think that people suffer from that, and I think it's a dangerous thing to do. So
look, it's probably no news to you, but I have a very strong dislike of lawyers. I'm a recovering lawyer myself. And one of the reasons is every now and again you get these new things, or new things to them at least, coming in, and then all of a sudden everybody's an expert.
Yes.
We have been doing privacy law for probably between 12 and 15 years, depending on who in my company you talk to. And, we're very irritated by people who now come in and pretend to be experts in POPIA or the GDPR, because it's a very specialized field and you can make mistakes fairly easily. And we're seeing a lot of that. And there are a lot of sort of myths being created around this. So my advice always to people is just be very careful. There are those of us that have been around for a very long time, we have been doing privacy law for a long time, and there are quite a few companies that are really good. But be careful of the lawyers out there who are pretending to be POPIA experts.
Yes, and you know what the thing is what I've also noticed is when that information is miscommunicated from the top all the way through the organization, it starts impacting on how people deliver their KPIs and how people want to do their jobs. Because I remember once being in a meeting and they didn't want to do anything in order to drive a promotion because they were so
paralyzed.
Yeah, completely paralyzed. So
I've been laughing about all of these emails everybody's been sending to get people to opt in to direct marketing for the GDPR. So this is by no means a South African problem. In the first place, you are over complying when you do that 90% of the time. And we've seen the same thing with POPI. People are preemptively over-complying, and because they're taking advice from lawyers who don't necessarily know the first thing about digital marketing, they're also unnecessarily losing 90% of their list. Which is a
huge problem.
Thing.
Yeah. That was actually one of my questions. Is like, what happens now with all this data that you've collected over the years, and now all of a sudden, you can still keep it, right?
Yeah. Look, so we follow what we call a risk-based approach.
Yeah.
So some of our advice is flying slightly close to the wind, or sailing close to the wind is the expression, I think, or farting against the thunder. I believe in pragmatism above everything else.
Yes.
And no piece of legislation has actually ever disrupted business in South Africa, and I don't think POPI is going to do that either, unless you are buying or selling information on a massive scale. If you work for a company that sells leads or data for a living, you're right to feel a little bit panicky. And you have some work that you need to do post-haste. But for 99% of businesses in South Africa, I firmly believe it's a smallish adjustment in how we do things, not necessarily what we do.
Yeah.
And so if we talk about, so the biggest thing, obviously, on pretty much everybody's mind about POPI is direct marketing, right? So will we be able to continue to send our newsletter to our base?
Yes.
And I would say about 90% of the time, my advice to companies is just make sure you have a solid unsubscribe. Make sure you put a good consent in going forward. But with your existing base, if you have a solid unsubscribe and your content is good and you're not sending it too regularly, all of that marketing, good content marketing principles.
Yes.
If you do that, no one's going to complain.
Yeah. No, totally. And if they opt out, then respect that and have your systems in place that you go and communicate to them. A question.
And also it's worth saying that, this regulator herself has said that they're not going to have capacity to go after every single direct marketing complaint, and they're getting thousands per month. They're not going to have a call center for the first 4 years. So just, get your house in order and follow sort of ethical practices, and you'll be fine.
Quick question. So the Direct Marketing Association, they have a do not contact list that you can register on, so that companies can dedupe against that to make sure that they don't contact you. Is there a broader scale of that for consumers in order for them to opt out of all of these call centers calling them and what?
So the Direct Marketing Association's Do Not Contact list is something that was funded by the industry, and it's been around for quite a long time. There's no legal obligation at the moment for marketers to, unless they're members of the association, to check against that list. The Consumer Protection Act was supposed to create an official do not contact list, but they haven't gotten around to that yet. So for the moment we just have that. So if that's going to happen, it's probably going to happen in terms of the Consumer Protection Act, and not so much POPI.
Yeah, and very interesting. A question that I have from my perspective, and I'm deviating a bit, is, you know, when you work with data scientists and data analysts and so forth, you know, when you give your data to them and then they enrich your data, they also do analysis on it. And sometimes some companies, like, for example, the financial companies acquire data where they buy these data lists. How does these things impact the way that you're going to do marketing going forward?
Yeah, so profiling and data enrichment is probably one of the most complicated things when you start thinking in terms of data protection. So there are various stages in which you have to think about it. And the first question that you have to ask yourself is, am I getting this data in a lawful way? So if you are buying the data, does the person know that their data is being bought and sold? And our regulator in a meeting the other day that I attended was very, very clear about it, is that you are not allowed to sell identifiable personal information without the person's consent. And I don't know many people who will consent. So what you see in Europe is, so they incentivize people. They say, well, we want to sell your data. We'll give you 10 euros every time we sell it. And some people then decide to sign up for that kind of thing. But most people won't take kindly to their personal information being sold. Facebook is a good example of that. So that's always the first issue with data enrichment is, am I getting it in a legal way? Particularly when you're not getting it from me directly. And then the second thing is, once you legally have it, are you sure it's of a good quality? And then shit gets real when you use that data to make decisions about people. So you refer to the financial services guys. What they tend to do is make really life-changing decisions, right? So do I give you credit or not? And if you make that decision based on bad data, you can get into a significant amount of trouble with the information regulator, because you're messing with people's lives. And what is interesting is, you know, even with marketing, when you do sort of automated decision making based on your data, you can, if you do it incorrectly, you can discriminate against people. So some people will see the marketing and some people won't, but that can perpetuate all kinds of, you know, evil things, like, you know, discrimination based on age or race or where you live.
That's interesting.
Yeah. No, well, I find it interesting, but I'm not normal, so.
Well, that makes us two in the pot. Oh my goodness! But listen, let me tell you one thing. We had somebody, Alfred Adrian, the other day on the show. He's a comedian, but now he also comes out of marketing backgrounds. We had a very interesting conversation, and you know, the most important thing that I've noticed is, like, what marketers or organizations do is they spend all this money on research and data science and segmenting their customers and understanding who they are, and then they just put them back in a box. And the whole thing is you need to start being more smarter with your data and actually understand the behaviors behind it, rather than just putting people in boxes. You and especially like some brands target according to race and all those kind of things. So I clearly get what you're saying.
I think I mean, and that's what this kind of legislation is supposed to do, is to go, okay, well, if you want to do profiling, cool, do it, but do it right.
Yes.
So those guys who are kind of playing around with the data, not really doing something with it, the risk will make it not worth their while. You know, so the serious players will stay, and the guys who were high risk and they were just kind of playing around, they're probably gonna, you know, either get serious or stop doing it.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Tell me, what are the myths of POPI? Because I think many people have so many different perspectives of what is right and what is wrong. Maybe can you debunk
You're
those
being
myths?
very generous. I mean, many people just say things that are flat out wrong. So I would like to start with the most popular myth at the moment, which actually relates to the GDPR.
Yeah.
Right. So there's this thing, it's just driving me batshit crazy, where people think, well, if I have the information of a European citizen, then the GDPR applies to me. And that's absolute horse manure of the highest order. Like, you will not find the word citizen in the GDPR. The GDPR will apply to a South African company in very, very limited cases, and it's mostly for those South African companies who either have a representative in the EU, or they target Europeans specifically. So what the EU regulators look at is, Do you make reference to Europeans in your marketing? Do you have your website in a language other than English, so Spanish or German or whatever? Do you have a strategy to sell to people in Europe? And then for marketing, they're going to look at, do you track the behavior or monitor the behavior of individuals while they are in Europe? Those are the tests. And we have a little picture of it somewhere on our website. It's got sweet bugger all to do with whether you have the data of a European, because we all do. So then the GDPR would apply to everybody in the whole wide world, and that's just not what was intended. So that's my favorite myth at the moment. My second, by a hair, is that you need consent in order to process personal information. That's also just flat out wrong. 99% of processing that you do on a daily basis as a business, you will not need consent for, because the person asked you to do it.
Yeah.
Right? If I buy something on Takealot or whatever,
and
I give them my physical address,
Yeah.
I know that they're going to use it to deliver my package. I asked them, so don't ask for my consent, because I can't say no. If I want my Lego, you have to use my information.
Correct.
So 99% of the times you're going to do stuff with personal information because there's a contract between you and the consumer, or because there's a legislation that tells you that you have to do it. And in any event, asking consent when people can't say no and still have access to your product or your service is illegal in itself.
Sure.
Because it's not voluntary. So that's my all-time sort of my favorite POPIA thing that I'm seeing, is that people somehow are getting advice that they need to ask consent to process my personal information. It's not even valid. So it's not, you're wasting paper.
Yeah, exactly. Because some of them are double opt-ins, right? Some people are asking for double opt-ins. I mean, like, that's even taking it to the worst extreme.
Oh, and I mean, like, we do a lot of usability testing on legal documents. So we actually ask people, like, how do you feel when you see a consent like that? And most people, because they know they can't say no, they think that you're going to do something dodgy with it. They immediately think, what are you planning to do with my data?
Exactly. Yep.
So the only time POPIA actually requires consent is if you want to send a person direct marketing. And then, if you're buying and selling data, that's another, I think, fairly clear time at which, at some point someone needs to ask for my consent. But for the rest, it's generally justifiable in some other way.
Very interesting. And you know what? I think it's so important to have these kind of discussions, because, I mean, maybe some industries, I don't know, maybe you can highlight it for me, but if FSP regulated clients, like in the financial sector, do they have different set of rules?
Yeah, so there are some sort of many regulated industries have some rules about data management. So you're right to point out FSPs, for instance, have a duty of confidentiality, so do doctors, but that is like a tiny sliver of what data protection is all about. So generally speaking, in any event, POPIA will trump all of that legislation. If POPIA is stronger, the protection in POPIA is stronger than that legislation, then POPIA applies. In most instances, just both pieces of legislation will apply. The high-risk industries, or the people who I think are justifiably worried, I think insurance. I mean, those guys are a little bit scared of POPIA because they buy and sell data. That's true. And micro lenders and so financial services is very, very high on the regulator's agenda. In fact, she said so on multiple occasions, and about 85% of the complaints that they are currently receiving comes from banks. Yeah.
Wow,
Banks,
that's interesting. I would agree with that. And you know what annoys me is like, the systems even are not integrated, that some people will call you again and again and again and again from the same company, and after you told them to remove you from the list. Very crazy. But listen, we're going to go for a quick ad break, and then when we get back, maybe we can talk about real scenarios of like campaigns and so forth, and have a brainstorm around that.
Sure.
Cool.
The station with the best music. Best music.
I love the music.
Best music.
0. This one's explosive.
Brandlive.co.za.
brandlive.co.za. Making a bold statement yet blending into the surrounding suburbs of Melville, 27 Boxes is a realization of edgy design and practical implementation. A radical departure from the shopping malls of our generation, yet not a return to the high streets of our youth. 27 Boxes showcases the best of a shopping centre set in a garden, surrounded by the bohemian suburb that is Melville. 27 Boxes, shop, play, eat.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the WITEE Chatterbot show. We are having a lovely chat with Elizabeth Stadler, who is talking to us about POPIA, the GDPR, and we're just debunking some of the myths. In case you've missed it, you can then later just download the podcast in order to hear everything that we had to say. But Elizabeth, welcome back, and I want us to unpack like some of the typical like campaigns that we as marketers would do, and see how that fits within POPIA. So the first thing is like, okay, right. So the rule of thumb is that you need to always give consumers the option to opt out when you are communicating with them, should they not want to engage with you. And there's many cases sometimes where people make it very difficult for consumers to opt out. For example, click on this link, and we know that people don't have access to data. People don't always have that because I think 80% of our market is on prepaid, 60 or 70%. I can't remember the stat.
Yeah.
So what is your views on that, and what's the rule behind that?
Yeah, so, for the unsubscribes, there's never really been a sort of a solid rule. There's some rules in the Consumer Protection Act, and there's some rules in the WASPA, which is the Wireless Application Service Providers Association. And generally best practice is that it should be without sort of undue formality is what the word that the phrase that they use. So my rule is always that your opt-out must be on the same channel. So if I'm sending you an SMS, not cool to put a URL in the SMS that I must now click on in order to go unsubscribe. You have to, spend the money, buy the short code so that I can just SMS stop. Same goes for email. Telemarketing is obviously easy because, I'll just say fuck off and you must interpret that. So same channel. And what you're saying about, the data, that's true. Not really sure how we will ever get around that. But in general, just this. So you need to allow people to respond to you on the same sort of channels, and then you need to process those unsubscribes. Many complaints happen because people don't actually adhere to the unsubscribe or listen to the consumer, which is just bad form,
Yeah, exactly. Because they know that they need to put it there, but then when people opt out, I think there's a company that I opted in once. I think 5 years ago, and I think I've asked them to opt out like 10 times already, and they keep on SMSing me on their sales and stuff, and I'm like, stop it! Like, I've had enough. But it really gets annoying, and I think you actually do more brand damage than anything else. But
also, you're cruising for a bit of a bruising because that's what people complain about, and then you're going to be on the regulator's radar, and it's difficult to get off it once you're on it. And she doesn't have to stick to just that complaint. Then she'll look at everything.
Yeah, then you got a problem.
They're going to come knock on your door, and they're going to ask to see your database, and they're going to ask you where you got the details in the first place. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is to fix your unsubscribe process.
Yes. Very important. And also just an idea for the audience is one thing that's very cool to do is it's a very cool suggestion that you have is to have a short code. You get now the reverse build short codes. It doesn't cost the consumer any money. So they opt out. Because
I remember with the CPA, we went, who's going to complain about R1.50? Well.
Wow.
It's a testimony to how much people hate spam. So, they do complain.
Yeah, because, and also I have to be honest, we as marketers really do exploit consumers. I think like if we look at SMS marketing, I mean, yes, we killed that thing. And I think financial services was the biggest culprit in that regard. But I think, we have to respect people's privacy and, enough is enough. And if I say no, then no is no. And opt out and get it over and done with.
Yep.
Okay.
That's, we should have a hashtag for that.
Yeah. Let's start the movement.
No is no.
Don't touch my data.
Yeah, exactly.
So the other thing, let's take a competition. So now I have a promotion, and I am driving a call to action. So therefore, you need to enter this competition. Tell me a little bit about yourself. And in order for you to enter this competition, you need to provide me with a copy of your till slip, what. Now,
Yes.
first question is, do I need to opt in as a consumer in order to enter the competition?
Yeah, so just entering the competition will be consent, right? So POPIA recognizes implicit consent. So you don't have to ask a person, do you consent to me using your data for the competition? Because, I sent you, my information for that very purpose. And you'll just look stupid asking. The problem with competitions is that we all know that the competition is rarely about the competition.
Yes.
Competitions these days are about the data. So
Correct.
It's about the stuff that I'm going to do with the data outside of the competition. So
Correct.
if you, for instance, planning on opting all of the people who enter into your newsletter, or you're planning to do some other form of data mining or selling the data, which happens quite often, then you're going to have to be very, very transparent about it. You're going to have to tell people, you think you're entering into a competition, but actually we're going to do this list of 10 things with your data. And for some of those, you might actually need consent. So if you are, explicit consent. So if you're going to use it for direct marketing, or you're going to share it with other companies, or whatever the case may be. I've actually encountered this, and I mean, this is one of the most sort of exploitative, I think, practices that I've encountered in a long time, is children who attend open days for colleges and stuff, and they get asked to sign up for a competition, but then in fact what the organizers are doing is they're selling the data to the educational institutions. Yeah, so that's just dodgy, I think, which is, a legal term.
But
dodgy.
It's so easy. I mean, like, the scary thing is like, we as marketers, and I mean, I've worked with data science in the past and so forth. It's so easy just to say, can you extract out of your database for me people that have just purchased a home?
Yeah.
It's so easy to do, and you can have over 30 fields on this person. Easy.
Yeah.
And this is the scary thing, is like, what I think from a consumer perspective, if we look at what's happening, with Cambridge Analytica, even the other, I think last year sometime there was a
50 million South Africans' ID numbers are online, including my 3-year-old daughter. Yes.
No way.
And that stuff's being bought and sold daily, hey? That's why I laughed so hard last week when I got an email from one of the FSCs that I have an RA with, and they've gone through the trouble to secure my statement with a password, except it's my freaking ID number. No South African has this. Your ID number is online, and that was the result of a company thinking they're going to be clever and create this master sort of list of South Africans who might want property, and then put it on a server that was open.
I'm sure that's what happened with Liberty as well. And when companies have so much
information.
Well,
no, Liberty had something happen to them that happens quite easily. I mean, there's someone hacked the email. So the problem is what's called unstructured data, so stuff that was sent or received via email. So that was probably someone got phished.
Sure.
Yeah. So Liberty, I mean, I think they're getting quite a thrashing for something that it happens at most companies.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many episodes, like a few, like not episodes, just shows that you can watch on Netflix about these hackers and how easy things are for them.
Very easy.
I think Sony also had a big thing. But I mean, the important thing is also, when you as a consumer, and I keep on flipping between the marketer and the consumer, but from a consumer perspective is when I give you a lot of personal, like, my blood type, my medical history, do I own a house, my ID, everything about my whole decision tree, and all of that information needs to be protected to the biggest extreme, the more you have on me. So,
and I mean, never mind that, you're not allowed to ask for stuff that you're not actually going to use. So this morning I was sitting at a restaurant and I wanted to make use of their free Wi-Fi, except Wi-Fi isn't really free, right? So I have to fill in my contact details.
I
And
love
I'm
that.
going, well, I
Yeah.
don't want you to contact me. So why are you asking me for my contact and my age and my gender? Like, what?
No.
Why? And then I get a message to say, don't worry, we won't sell it. I'm like, yeah, okay, but what are you actually going to do? What's my gender got to do with free Wi-Fi? So, and that's what we're saying about the competitions is often we collect much more than what we need to actually run the competition. And then the question is, that's the difference that POPIA's going to make. Is you in future going to have to tell people what do you plan to do? And you can't just ask for information just for the sake of having it.
Yeah, and trust is the currency of the 21st century. So that is a very important thing that if you want to be around and you can't exploit customers like and I like that. It's going to be very hard for marketers. I'm not going to lie. It's not going to be easy.
I don't know. Like, here's the thing. It's just some of the things that we've been doing. We know that we as marketers that it's not exactly ethical. So all this does reinforces ethical behavior. Now, if you unethical marketer, I'm not that I'm not that sorry that you're going to be cut down a little bit.
Yeah, no,
but
absolutely.
for the guys out there who are behaving responsibly, and I think that's marketing that yields better results anyway. I will go to bat for them every day of the week, and there are many of them. So we know when we're doing stuff that's slightly icky, and that's because we all have personal information. So just 100%. Think if someone was doing that with your personal information, would you be comfortable?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that is exactly how you need to look. And I think like when you're sitting around the boardroom table and you're making these big decisions, I think it's important to always remember that you're a customer first. And then you work for a corporate or for an environment because I was watching something on Candy on festival, and they were talking about like something completely different, which was about gender equality. And they say like, men need to be reprogrammed on how to view women in the workplace because there's these stigma and stereotypes happening. And the one thing this woman said, which really resonated with me, if you really want to get your point across, you talk about their children. Because at the moment you start talking about their children, how would your children like to see you, or your daughters like to see you, handle this? And the same thing is with data. It's like how you said your 3-year-old's data was online. Like, how would you feel if this data is being exploited?
Yeah, and I mean, most people have a built-in, there's built-in alarm system when it comes to dodgy, things with data. And we like using that in training quite often. It's okay, well, you've just told me that you do this thing. How would you feel if someone did that to you?
No, love it. Anyway, let's quickly get into the GDPR. So now we understand a POPIA and we know what it's all about and where we're at. But how does it compare with GDPR?
So POPIA was actually based on the predecessor of the GDPR, so the Data Protection Directive, which Europe had flipped for a couple of decades.
Yeah.
And the GDPR is actually still fairly consistent with that directive. It just it adds a lot of things. So if you are, I often get asked the question, or do I need separate projects? Let's assume that it does apply to the GDPR. Do I need separate compliance projects for POPIA and the GDPR? And the answer is no, not really. If you are POPIA compliant, you'll be a long way towards GDPR compliant. There's some things that you need to add. And most of those things are stuff that we would have recommended you do anyway to comply with POPIA. So a good example is one of the standard things that we make businesses do is to build in sort of it's called a privacy impact assessment into whenever they decide to do something or not, new products or processes. That's become a requirement in terms of the GDPR. So that's a really good example. But for the most part, they're really consistent. So if a lot of businesses in South Africa have decided sort of voluntarily to become GDPR compliant. Maybe they have European partners or European customers, and that's the reason. Or maybe, businesses in the marketing industry that do analytics, for instance, on behalf of a company wherever they are in the world. Many of them have decided to proactively become GDPR compliant, and that takes them quite a far way into POPIA compliance anyway. Yeah. So they are very consistent.
Interesting. Well, this means we have to come to an end to the show because we're almost done. I would speak to you the whole day if I could. But now we have a little tradition. So we play a 1-minute game and ask you 10 questions and see how quickly you can answer them. So on your marks, get set, go. What social stigma does society need to get over? Quickly.
Flip it.
Okay.
And old people don't know things.
Okay. What makes you roll your eyes every time you hear it?
Well, every time a lawyer opens their mouth, really.
Okay. Who has a zero filter between their brain and mouth? I've got an answer for that.
Me.
What is your cure for hiccups?
When last did you see a white horse? I think.
How do you judge a person?
By their cover.
Okay. When was the last time you were snooping and found something you wish you hadn't?
Oh no, just now.
Okay. What problem are you currently grappling with?
Crap. I don't know.
Okay. Do you eat food that?
Too many.
Okay. Do you eat food that passes its expiration date if it still smells and looks fine?
Yes, I'm a mother. I don't have time for expiration dates.
Okay, you got a good one. You got 8 out of 10. That is incredible. But I'm still going to ask you the last 2 questions. What tips or tricks have you picked up from your job?
Flip it. Just speak to people in language they understand.
I love that.
I think it's the most important one.
And you know what's hilarious? Because the next question is, what languages do you wish you could speak?
Flip. I don't know. German, because it sounds so, whatever you say in German, it sounds hectic.
I know, it's very, and Arabic is just as bad. Oh my goodness. Like very intimidating.
Yeah. Armenian is a good one.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us today, Elizabeth, and for taking the time to out of your busy schedule to share the information. How can people get hold of you if they wish to go on your training courses or get some advice from you?
Go play around on our website. There's a lot of shit that's free there. So, for instance, if you want to know where the GDPR applies to you, so that's Novation Consulting. That's www.novcon.co.za.
Okay.
Or otherwise, you'll find also our email addresses and cell phone numbers. Just pick up the phone and give us a call. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, from our side, we would like to thank Brand Life Radio for the innovative container studio and for making the show possible. And listen to our shows on www.brandlife.co.za. You can also find our shows on either Castbox, iTunes, or Google Play by searching for Booyah by Carmen Murray. Please rate our show to help others find it. And thank you to Gold Studios, who manages our shows on iTunes, Castbox, and Google Play. So don't forget to tune in next week, same time, same place. Arrivederci. Ciao.
Harnessing the power of talk radio. Brandlive.co.za